Hi guys, I'm Randy over at Fresh Squeeze Life, and we're going to be talking today about how to paint your cabinets without sanding. I'm going to be using Rust-Oleum's Cabinet Transformation Kit. It is a 3 or 4 step process, and I say 3 or 4 steps because there's an optional glazing process. I don't think I'm going to use it because I really love the paint color as is, but we'll see as we get into it. For me, I had to move my cabinet here into my living room, and the reason is my cabinet is very close to the walls on the sides, and so I'm unable to paint the sides without taking it out. And normally I would paint in my garage, but it's about 8 degrees outside today, and so it's too cold. So we're doing it here in my living room. And just so you know, with any project, you want to cover your surface. I'm using a plastic tarp, but I also have a cotton tarp that I use, so be sure and cover everything. You don't want to be splattering paint on your floor. I'm also wearing my painting clothes. These are my painting clothes. You can't see them, but I have painting shoes, and they're shoes that I don't mind getting paint on. So I'm going to show you my cabinet here in just a second and show you what you need to do to start your process. Alright, before we start, what we're going to do is we're going to take off all of our hardware, and we're going to remove your doors. And the one thing that you might want to remember is if you're going to buy new hardware, it's possible that if they don't fit in the same holes, you are going to need to put some wood filler over the holes and then sand that before you start doing anything on these. I'm going to be using the same hardware, so I don't need to do that. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to take off all my hardware. I'm going to take off my doors, and I'm going to set that up on a table, and that's actually where I'm going to be videotaping from here on out, because I think it'll be easier for me to get in a little bit closer with just showing the doors. So go ahead and you do that step, and I'm going to do that step as well. One thing that I do want you to keep in mind, on mine, I don't necessarily need to number my doors because I can tell very easily where they go. But if you have, maybe you're working on a bigger project, you might need to number your doors and your hardware to remember where to put it. Alright, I have my doors all set up. I have my workspace covered in plastic. I just use large black plastic trash bags, and those work great. So here I am with my door, and I will say in every step of this process, this is the back of my door. I'm going to start on the back of my door and work my way to the front. And the reason is I just want to make sure that I do a really good job on the back and get the feel for it before I flip it over and do it on the front. And I feel like that's especially important for the painting steps. So normally on doors, on covered doors, you're going to have these little bumpers right here, and you just need to take a little scraper and get those off, or honestly you can pick them right off with your fingers usually, and you can, when you go to put those back on your cabinet, you can just buy new ones at Home Depot. Alright, as you can see, I've got gloves on. And I'm just using regular kitchen gloves. I get these at Walmart for about $1.25. We're going to be doing first the cleaning and deglossing step. Now, if your cabinets are very dirty, grimy, like this would, I think, would probably apply more to kitchen cabinets or very old cabinets, wash them first with soap and water. And you can go ahead and scrub them because we're going to be scrubbing them in this step also. I don't need to do that because mine are actually fairly good. It's mostly dust that I'm getting off. So what we're going to do on this step, let me tell you first, so that way you don't have to sit here and watch this whole part. First, we're going to take the deglosser, and we're going to put actually quite a bit of the deglosser on this scrub pad, and we're going to scrub that really well, and getting really good here in the creases, and you're just going to scrub it very well. You want to take some time on this step because it's what helps the paint to stick. Then you're going to take a wet rag after you've done that, and you're going to wipe that all off. Then you're going to take a dry rag and you're going to dry it. And you're going to want to make sure that you don't see that you don't see any excess deglosser, like a soapy film. You don't want to see a soapy film. So you want to be sure that you get it all off to where all you see is your cabinet door. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to do a little bit of this, although I'm not going to probably film the whole thing. So here we go. Put a good amount of deglosser on there, and you basically legitimately scrub your cabinet door and your cabinet. So we're going to do this not only on the doors, but also on the drawers and on the actual body of the cabinet. Okay. So like I said, this is a step that you're really going to want to take some time on. You don't want to rush through this. I'm going to get a little bit of this excess glue off from the bumpers with the scraper, just because I'm going to be scraping forever with the deglosser and the sponge. So there, got that off. So I'm going to go over those areas. Okay, so just be sure that you get the entire door or entire surface of whatever part you're doing. Then I'm going to take my wet rag, I'm going to go over it. You're removing the deglosser, so be sure again to get in all the corners. You don't want anything building up, including in your paint stuff. You're going to be sure to want to get your corners really well also. You don't want anything building up in your corners. Okay, so there we go. I've wiped that off. Now I'm going to take my dry rag and wipe it all down. All right, so there we go, one side done. I'm going to move on to my other doors, then I'm going to move on to my actual cabinet, then I'm going to come back and flip these and do the other side. Okay, we're ready to start our painting step. I want to show you here, I've opened my paint, I've mixed it well with the paint stir that comes in the package, and then I poured it here into a disposable container. And that's just going to help so you don't get a mess all over the sides of your paint can. So when we're painting, what we want to remember is we want to do an even coat, and we want to directionally, we want to be going up and down, except for these pieces right here. We're going to go across. So everything's going to be up and down, up and down. These three places are across. So what we're going to do first is we're going to frame our cabinet door. So I'm going to go across on these three pieces. Okay. And again, one thing you want to remember when you're working with paint is you don't want extremely thick coats because you're going to get drips. I already have some that's kind of going down here in these corners and I'm going to have to get out, but I'll do that when we're working on that part of the door. Okay. And remember too that you can go back over this. Just meaning that you can go back over it and smooth out your paint. Okay, so you're not kind of stuck with your first coat. Okay, so then when we get here, put our paint on like this because we want to make sure that we get it real nicely here in our corners. You want to make sure you're getting your paint in your corners. So you're going to have to kind of push your paintbrush in there. Then again here, we're going to be doing our up and down strokes. This type of paint has a tendency to level itself out. So don't worry too much about brush strokes because it'll take care of itself. Here in your corners, you want to make sure that you're not puddling. Be sure and smooth that out. Oops. Now, like I said, it's good that we're doing the back of the door here because I'm kind of learning the feel of the paint and the feel of the cabinet. And so as I go along, and as you go along, you're going to get better at this. And this is the very first one I'm doing, so just know that this is not perfect. It'll get better as I go along. So again, I want to come around here, make sure that I'm getting this stuff out of the corners because you don't want that puddling up in there like I've said a few times. Now we're going to do our edges when we do the front of the cabinet, but I do want to make sure that I get off. It's mostly right there on the front that I was getting some drips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the video. I'm going to keep going on what I'm doing, keep going on my cabinet, do all the doors, then I'm going to do the actual cabinet. And I do want to say you want to let it dry 2 to 3 hours between coats. Okay guys, we're ready for our last step. We've got our entire cabinet painted and it's dried. This is the protective top coat. I've mixed it really well with the stir stick. And I poured some in this plastic container that's disposable. This is the brush that I'm going to be using, and I found this brush to be quite helpful when I was painting the cabinet, so I'm going to use it a little bit again while I'm doing the top coat. The top coat is very similar to painting. You're going to do up and down strokes on the sides, and then here in this middle part, and then across here, you're going to go this way. The thing with the protective top coat is it dries a bit faster, but it doesn't dry as fast as I thought it would. So you don't have to rush, but just take your time. And one thing is once it starts drying, you definitely don't want to put your brush back into it. Let's see. The thing that I wanted to tell you about this, this helped me quite a bit, just kind of going around in these spaces in here when I was painting. It was helping me avoid the little pools that you get in the corners. And so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take this paintbrush and I'm going to paint, or I'm going to put the protective top coat on all these spots. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it here around these corners. Then I'm going to take my 2-inch brush again and do my up and down strokes this way. That way I don't get it pooling in the corners, and that way I don't maybe miss that it's drying in the corners. So that's what I'm going to do with that. So from here on out, basically you're gonna do your protective top coat. This you want to let dry actually for 24 hours before you actually start using the cabinet. You can put it together, put your doors on, put all your hardware on in 12 hours, but basically you want to let it dry for at least a full day so the top coat hardens the way it's supposed to. So I hope this has been helpful. If I think of anything else, I'll probably add on to the end of this video. If not, it'll be in my blog post. And happy painting.